Hi everyone, you're watching the Caffeinated Corporate Lawyer, where we try to make meaningful content to help you better understand the intricacies of corporate law. I hope you guys are adequately caffeinated because today we are going to look at Section 4 of the Companies Act 2013, which deals with the topic of Memorandum of Association. Before we begin with Section 4, let's refresh our memory. So, Memorandum of Association is defined under Section 2 Clause 56 of the Companies Act 2013, which says that memorandum means the memorandum of association of a company as originally framed or as altered from time to time in pursuance of any previous company law or of this act. This means that all the alterations that are made in the memorandum from time to time will also be a part of the memorandum of association. However, this is not sufficient to understand the importance and relevance of memorandum of association. Every company has two important charter documents. One is the Memorandum of Association and the other is the Articles of Association, which have to be prepared and filed with the ROC for the incorporation of the company. So, essentially this is the first step of the formation of any company. So, why is memorandum such an important piece of document? Well, memorandum is important because it answers to the most pertinent questions about the foundation and structure of the company. For instance, it contains the object clause, which sheds light as to what are the objectives for which the company is incorporated. Additionally, it also defines the powers of the company as well as confines the powers of the company. What this means is that the memorandum chalks down the list of all the activities that can be undertaken by the company in order to pursue and fulfill its objective. However, a company cannot undertake any activity which is outside its ambit. Thus, we can say that memorandum defines the possible scope of operations of the company beyond which it cannot undertake any actions which are not in consonance with its objective clause. If the company does anything which is beyond the powers of the company as laid down in the memorandum, then it would be deemed to be ultra vires the company and void. The term ultra vires here means which is beyond the powers. So what this essentially means is that any action undertaken by the company which is beyond the powers of the company would be void, and it cannot be made valid even by the assent or approval of all of the shareholders of the company. Thus, Memorandum of Association clearly puts down a limitation on the powers of the company. Now, in practical terms, memorandum serves two purposes depending on who you are. So, if you are a potential shareholder who wants to invest in the company by buying the shares of the company, or a creditor who wants to give loan to the company, or for that matter, any person who wants to enter into a proposed arrangement or transaction with the company in the future, then you can look for the memorandum of the company to find out as to what are the powers of the company and what are the spectrum of activities that can be undertaken by the company. So, it will enable the shareholder or creditor to understand how their money would be utilized by the company and the inherent risks of investing in such a company. Secondly, it provides information to third parties or outsiders who might be in possible talks of entering into a contract with the company as to whether the essence of the contract which they are purporting to enter into with the company is in alignment with the objective clause of the company or not. Otherwise, the said contract would be void if it is discovered later on that the activities for which the contract was entered into is ultra vires or beyond the powers of the company as per the objective clause of the company. That is, the company didn't have the authority in the first place to undertake the activities, thus rendering the contract entered into with the company as void. So, which are the documents that you would be required to look at in order to extract the general information of the company if you're working, say, on a due diligence report? So it would include the following documents: the certified copy of the Memorandum of Association and Articles of Association of the company, and the certificate of incorporation of the company, which is basically a document to certify that your company is registered with the ROC and stands incorporated. These are the first three documents that you would be required to look at in order to extract about the general information of the company while undertaking a due diligence. Here's a small exercise for you guys. Why don't you Google the Memorandum of Association of any company that is available online and check it out for yourself as to what all information you can get about the said company after watching this video, and tell us about it in the comment section. Now that we have a basic understanding of the concept of Memorandum of Association, let's dive into Section 4 of the Companies Act 2013. So, subsection 1 of Section 4 says that the memorandum of a company shall state the name of the company with the last word limited in the case of a public limited company, or the last words private limited in the case of a private limited company, provided that nothing in this clause shall apply to a company registered under Section 8. The state in which the registered office of the company is to be situated, the objectives for which the company is proposed to be incorporated, and any matter considered necessary in furtherance thereof, the liability of the members of the company, whether limited or unlimited, and also state, in the case of a company limited by shares, the liability of its members is limited to the amount unpaid, if any, on the shares held by them, and in the case of a company limited by guarantee, the amount up to which each member undertakes to a. contribute to the assets of the company in the event of its being wound up while he is a member, or within 1 year after he ceases to be a member, for payment of the debts and liabilities of the company, or of such debts and liabilities as may have been contracted before he ceases to be a member, as the case may be, and b. to the costs, charges and expenses of winding up, and for the adjustment of the rights of the contributories among themselves. In the case of a company having a share capital, the amount of share capital with which the company is to be registered and the division thereof into shares of a fixed amount, and the number of shares which the subscribers to the memorandum agree to subscribe, which shall not be less than 1 share, and the number of shares each subscriber to the memorandum intends to take, indicated opposite his name. In the case of one-person company, the name of the person who, in the event of death of the subscriber, shall become the member of the company. So section 4 subsection 1 states the content of the memorandum of association, basically, that is what all information should be captured in the memorandum of association of a company. It requires the memorandum of a company to contain all of the following. So as per clause A, the memorandum of association shall state name of the company with the last word limited in the case of public company and last word private limited in the case of a private limited company, as the case may be. Basically, this talks about the name clause, that the memorandum should state the full name of the company so that one is able to ascertain whether the company in question is a private company or a public company. For example, if the Caffeinated Corporate Lawyer is incorporated as a public company, then its registered name would be Caffeinated Corporate Lawyer Limited. However, if it is incorporated as a private company, then its registered name would be the Caffeinated Corporate Lawyer Private Limited. Furthermore, the proviso to this clause says that the companies which are incorporated under Section 8 of the Companies Act 2013 would be exempted from the requirement of using limited or private limited at the end of their name. So, the condition in this clause is not applicable to Section 8 companies, about which we will study in the later video. As per clause B, the memorandum of association should mention the name of the state in which the registered office of the company is supposed to be situated. For instance, if the company is getting incorporated in Maharashtra, then the memorandum should state the fact that the registered office of the company is located in Maharashtra. This is what we call as the registered office clause. As per clause C, the memorandum of association should state the objects for which the company is being incorporated, which basically means that the principal business activities that would be undertaken by the company, as well as all other ancillary activities the company can undertake for the furtherance of the objectives specified in the main objective clause, has to be mentioned in the object clause of the memorandum of association. For instance, the object clause of the Memorandum of Association might say that the object to be pursued by the company on its incorporation are to carry on business of manufacturing, converting, altering, designing, producing electrical parts used in automobiles, to trade, buy, sell, or act as agents to import or export electrical parts used in automobiles, to carry on the business and act as buyers, sellers, traders, agents, and dealers for obtaining the above objects. From this, we can ascertain that the main principal business activity of the company is to manufacture electrical parts used in automobiles. Then, it would also mention the matters which are necessary for the furtherance of the objects specified in the main objective clause, which would include to manufacture and deal in packaging materials, boxes, grading, branding, weighing, and marketing for all kinds of electrical parts and components used in automobiles. So basically, the company will mention all those activities which it would want to undertake in furtherance of its main objective, which is to manufacture electrical parts which are used in automobiles. Now, as per clause D, the memorandum of association should state whether the company would be a limited liability company or an unlimited liability company. Additionally, it should also state if the company is limited by shares or if the company is limited by guarantee, if the company is a limited liability company. This is what we call as the liability clause in the memorandum of association of a company. We already discussed the concept of limited liability and unlimited liability in our previous video. Now, as per clause E, the memorandum of association should contain the capital clause in the case of a company having a share capital as to what would be the total authorized share capital of the company with which the company would get registered, and the number along with the value of the shares into which the nominal or authorized share capital would be divided. For instance, it could be written down as the nominal capital of the company is rupees 50 lakhs, which is divided into 50,000 shares of rupees 100 each, along with the name of the subscribers and the number of the shares intended to be subscribed by them in front of their corresponding names. Lastly, as per clause F, the memorandum of association of a one-person company should have a succession clause, that is, the name of the person who, in the event of the death of the subscriber in case of a one-person company, would become the member of the company. Now, if you recall, we had already discussed previously that memorandum of association of a company can have 7 clauses, which are the name clause, the registered office clause, the objects clause, the liability clause, the capital clause, the association clause or subscription clause, and the succession clause in the case of a one-person company, which is what is described in Section 4, Subsection 1 of the Companies Act 2013 as to what all information should be there in the memorandum of association which has to be filed with the ROC for the successful incorporation or registration of the company. Moving on to Section 4, Subsection 2, which is as follows. The name stated in the memorandum of association shall not be identical with or resemble too nearly to the name of an existing company registered under this Act or any previous company law, or be such that its use by the company will constitute an offence under any law for the time being in force, or is undesirable in the opinion of central government. We know for a fact that a company is a distinct legal entity and is thus required to have a name of its own in order to establish its own identity. However, there are certain provisions and rules in place in Companies Act 2013 which have to be followed while deciding the name of the company. As per clause A of Section 4, Subsection 2, the name of such a proposed company should not be identical or resemble too nearly to the name of an existing company registered under this Act or any previous company law. If we see Rule 8 of the Companies Incorporation Rules 2014, which gives us a sense of what kind of names would be deemed to be too nearly similar with the name of an already existing company. As per the illustrations which you can see, Green Technology Limited is same as Greens Technology Limited and Greens Technologies Limited. Similarly, Pratap Technology Limited is same as Pratap's Technology Limited and Pratap's Technologies Limited. SM Computers Limited is not same as SMS Computers Limited. So basically, as we can see, if plural or singular forms are added to differentiate between the names, or where type and case of letters, spacing between letters, punctuation marks and special characters are added to differentiate between the names, the name of the companies can be deemed to be too nearly similar to each other. For example, ABC Limited is same as A.B.C. Limited, and A space B space C Limited is again similar to ABC Limited. Similarly, there are a bunch of other rules which have to be taken into consideration by the ROC to decide if the proposed name would be accepted or not. Additionally, Clause B of Section 4, Subsection 2 of the Companies Act 2013 states that the proposed name should not be such that its use by the company would constitute as an offence under any law for the time being in force, and it should not be undesirable in the opinion of the central government. Again, if you have a look at the Rule 8 of Companies Incorporation Rules 2014, undesirable names are those names which in the opinion of the central government are prohibited under the provisions of Section 3 of Emblems and Names Prevention and Improper Use Act 1950. Similarly, names which resemble each other or which are chosen to deceive, names which includes a registered trademark, names which include any word or words which are offensive to a section of people, and name which is identical to or too nearly resembles the name of an existing limited liability partnership would also not be considered by the ROC. Furthermore, statutory names such as the UN, Red Cross, World Bank, Amnesty International, etc. are also not allowed to be chosen. Furthermore, names which in any way indicate that the company is working for the government or is associated with the government are also not allowed. This is precisely what is stated in subsection 3 of Section 4 of the Companies Act 2013, which is as follows. Without prejudice to the provisions of subsection 2, a company shall not be registered with a name which contains any word or expression which is likely to give the impression that the company is in any way connected with or having the patronage of the central government, any state government, or any local authority, corporation, or body constituted by the central government or any state government under any law for the time being in force, or such word or expression as may be prescribed, unless the previous approval of the central government has been obtained for the use of any such word or expression. If we see Rule 8 again, Sub-Rule 8b lists out all the words or expressions which can be used only after the previous approval of central government. To sum up, one has to make sure that the proposed name of a company to be incorporated is not in contravention of any of the rules which are stated in Rule 8. Let's see Section 4, Subsection 4 now, which says, a person may make an application in such form and manner and accompanied by such fee as may be prescribed to the registrar for the reservation of a name set out in the application as the name of the proposed company or the name to which the company proposes to change its name. Essentially, any person who wants to incorporate a company can make an application to the ROC to reserve the name of the company which is set out in the application as the name of the proposed company, or in cases where the company is changing its existing name to another name, the name to which the company proposes to change its name. For example, if we want to incorporate a private company by the name of TCCL Private Limited, then we would file an application with the ROC to reserve the said name. The manner of filing along with the fees that has to be paid is given in Rule 9 of the Companies Incorporation Rules 2014, which says that an application for reservation of name shall be made through the web service available at www.mca.government.in by using web service SPICE, which is simplified proforma for incorporating company electronically, plus INC 32, and for the change of name by using web service RUN, which is reserve unique name, along with fee as provided in the company's registration offices and fees rules 2014, which may either be approved or rejected, as the case may be, by the registrar, Central Registration Center, after allowing resubmission of such web form within 15 days for rectification of the defects, if any, with effect from 23rd February 2020. So, any application for reservation of the proposed name of the company can be done by filing electronic form INC 32, or in case of change of name by using web service RUN, along with the payment of the prescribed fees. This application may be accepted or rejected by the ROC after allowing for resubmission of each web form within 15 days for rectification of the defects, if at all, is discovered by the ROC. So, if any defects are discovered in the application form made for reservation of the name or change in name, then such an application would be rejected and the ROC would allow another 15 days for resubmission of the form to rectify the said defects. Moving on to Section 4, Subsection 5, it says, upon receipt of an application under Subsection 4, the registrar may, on the basis of information and documents furnished along with the application, reserve the name for a period of 20 days from the date of approval or such other period as may be prescribed, provided that in case of an application for reservation of name or for change of its name by an existing company, the registrar may reserve the name for a period of 60 days from the date of approval. Whether after reservation of name under Clause 1, it is found that the name was applied by furnishing wrong or incorrect information, then, if the company has not been incorporated, the reserved name shall be cancelled and the person making application under Subsection 4 shall be liable to a penalty which may extend to 1 lakh rupees. If the company has been incorporated, the registrar may, after giving the company an opportunity of being heard, either direct the company to change its name within a period of 3 months after passing an ordinary resolution, take action for striking of the name of the company from the register of companies, or make a petition for the winding up of the company. Now, Section 4, Subsection 5, Clause 1 of the Act states that for the formation of the company, the registrar, on receiving the required documents, can reserve the name for 20 days from the date of approval, within which the company should get incorporated. Similarly, if the application is made by an existing company, then once the application is accepted, the name would be reserved for 60 days from the date of application, within which the company should take the requisite steps to change its name. It further states that if after making the reservation of the name, it is found out that the information furnished by the person making the application was wrong or incorrect, then there can be 2 possible scenarios. First, when the company has not been incorporated, the registrar can cancel the reservation of the name of the proposed company and impose a penalty that can extend to 1 lakh rupees on the person making the application for change in name or reservation of new proposed name. Second, where the company has already been incorporated, an application was made for change in name of the existing company. The ROC, after giving a reasonable opportunity of being heard, can take any of the following three steps as I mentioned. The ROC can direct the company to change its name within 3 months' time by passing an ordinary resolution, or the ROC can take requisite action and strike off the name of the company from the Registrar of Companies. So Register of Companies contains the name of all the companies which have been successfully incorporated, and striking out the name of the company from the registrar basically amounts to dissolution of the company. Lastly, the ROC can also file a petition for winding up of the company to dissolve the company. Now, subsection 6 of section 4 states that the memorandum of a company shall be in respective forms specified in tables A, B, C, D and E in Schedule 1 as may be applicable to such company. Remember that Companies Act 2013 has 7 schedules. So if we click on Schedule 1, we can see that model memorandum of association have been provided in Schedule 1 for every type of company in different tables for reference. So any person can refer to these model memorandum of associations to prepare the memorandum of their own proposed companies. We can see that Table 1 of Schedule 1 is a model memorandum of association for a company that is limited by shares. Similarly, Table B is the model memorandum of association of a company which is limited by guarantee and which does not have a share capital. So all these tables from A to E are sample memorandum of associations which may be referred to and considered for drafting the memorandum of association of a proposed company. Coming to the last subsection, which is section 4 subsection 7, it says that any provision in the memorandum or articles in the case of a company limited by guarantee and not having a share capital purporting to give any person a right to participate in the divisible profits of the company otherwise than as a member shall be void. What this essentially means is that if there is any provision in the articles or memorandum of association of a company that says that the distributable profits or excess profits would be given to a non-member of a company, then such a provision would be void. It is because only the members of the company have the right to receive the distributable profits or the excess profits and no one else has. That's all from this video. Hit us up in the comment section if you have any queries, or write to us at thecaffeinatedcorporatelawyers@gmail.com to give us your feedback. Follow our Instagram page to get some more exciting content, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you want to study all the sections with us. We will see you guys in the next one. Thanks.